Hey people, this is my video rundown of things in entertainment that interested me over the past week, and since I was not able to do a video last week, I'd like to cover some of the stuff that happened over that week too that I wasn't able to talk about. So I'm going to start off this video with a series of mini reviews of things that I either read or watched over this past week, starting with Ultimate Comics X-Men number 5, which I read pretty recently. I'm not a huge X-Men fan or anything. I don't really follow X-Men comics. I know a decent amount of X-Men, but I've never been a big X-Men fan. But reading this series, I think it's going to be a series that I might follow because it has started off pretty well, and it's gotten me interested to see where they're going with it. The main X-Men featured in this are Iceman, Kitty Pryde, Rogue, Wolverine's son Jimmy, because Wolverine is dead in the Ultimate Universe, and Human Torch, who has not ever been an X-Man in any of the comics before this, and it's interesting to see him in this series and not in a Fantastic Four series and alongside people his age on a team like that. But just the general story that they're going with, how mutants are viewed in this post-Ultimatum world. I know I'm probably talking about a lot of stuff that most of you don't understand, but it's a good story. The character William Stryker, who you might know from the X-Men films, is the antagonist of this story arc right now. He's turned into more of a supervillain character. I don't know how he is traditionally in the X-Men, classic X-Men comics, but it's a different William Stryker than I knew. And the ending of it is pretty exciting to see where it's going to go, this issue, because it looks like things are going to get a lot more action-packed, and they've already been pretty interesting so far, so that was pretty good. Also read this trade paperback of Captain America, and I'm always impressed with Captain America written by Ed Brubaker when I read it, because initially when I started to read Captain America, I think I wanted to read the Death of Captain America's story arc, and I went back just to read everything in the series before that, because it's a pretty short volume leading up to the whole Death of Captain America's story arc. So my impressions of Captain America before that were okay, Captain America is on the Avengers. He's a big leader of teams and stuff, and I see him more alongside other major characters. But I was never thinking that a solo Captain America book could be very interesting, and I was just really impressed by the early stuff that I read with that, featuring Steve Rogers, and then when they switched to Bucky and had him take over the role, that stuff has been really good too, and the way they were able to take a supporting character and make him into a leading character is very strong, and they continue to have Bucky starring in this even after Steve has returned from the dead in that awful storyline. But not to get into that, but just the interaction of seeing both of them in this, it's still very much Bucky's title at this point in the story, but having Steve back and both of them for this story is pretty good, and overall I'd recommend this to anybody who likes Captain America, even in the small sense, to read this series of Captain America written by Ed Brubaker. Now to get into movies, I watched Batman Year One, and I've got kind of complicated feelings on it. I read Batman Year One, the original graphic novel, which is a classic, quite a while ago, and I really enjoyed it. But I think my opinion on it was skewed a little bit. I recognize this because a lot of what Batman Year One is as a graphic novel was you inspired Batman Begins, so some of it seemed very familiar, and I can appreciate that this is where it came from. So Batman Year One, the graphic novel, very solid, and this is a very good adaptation of it, but watching it as a film made me realize that Batman Year One isn't exactly written like a film. It's written like a series of comic books, and it's very good in that form, and this is a very good way to bring that to life. But a straight up adaptation of Batman Year One, I don't think would have been a very good live action film. I'm glad they did it the way they did with Batman Begins, because to me has more of a rising action and feels like a full story, whereas Batman Year One tells a specific part over a period of time, but it's not like this is specific. this is the goal that we want to be accomplished. This is the villain that we want to stop here, and by the end of it, everything's wrapped up, and we're specifically leading into something like the ending is sort of similar, hinting at what's coming in the future, but Batman Begins works better as a film, and I think Batman Year One works better as a series of comic books, if that makes any sense. There are some comic book series, graphic novels, that are very easily translated into a movie format, like Superman Birthright, I think very easily could be translated into a movie, but Batman Year One, not to fault it at all, just is more of a series of comic books than a movie style writing. So Batman Year One, the animated film, very good adaptation of that, and I'd recommend it to you, but I'd also recommend that you actually read Batman Year One first to get that experience and then appreciate how they were able to bring that to life. And to round out my reviews for this video, I would like to talk a little bit about Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows, which I watched, and I found it to be quite enjoyable. I don't think the critics are really liking it that much, but if you enjoyed the first Sherlock Holmes movie, I think this is more of what you liked from that. Like, Robert Downey Jr. is still very entertaining as Sherlock Holmes in this, and the kind of fight scene that he did in that movie, the whole analytical processing, what he's going to do when he strikes this person and how the person is going to react to that. There's more of that in this, and I think those scenes were actually better in this movie. Like, it was more interesting, and there's more other types of slow motion in this, where like they're running through the woods and they're getting shot at, and like the splintering of the trees and everything. And I think the Sherlock Holmes movies, in my opinion, have the best use of slow motion in the last 10 years. And that's kind of a bold statement, but I really think it is kind of unique in the sense that a lot of movies use the slow motion to emphasize like the movement, and it does that, but it also kind of really emphasizes the impact of the strikes. Like when somebody is fighting, there's more of a tangible sense of what is actually occurring in this film, and I don't think it's like an overuse of slow motion like 300, which I personally think is an overuse of slow motion, because it just seems like everything is in slow motion, and yes, you're emphasizing the movements, but after a while it loses its effect, because if everything is in slow motion, then none of it looks that interesting. None of it is really that highlighted. So I think it uses just the right amount of that. So visually, it's an entertaining movie. The storyline is, I think, it felt a little bit long to me, but I thought it was a pretty solid story. Moriarty is an entertaining villain, and I think the way that he matches up against Sherlock Holmes is entertaining to watch, more so than Lord Blackwood from the first movie. Not to knock Lord Blackwood as a character or anything, but this is more of a nemesis relationship. So the two of them going at each other in this film was very cool, and I'm hoping to see a third one, and hoping that they can even build off of this movie, because it does have its flaws, and I'm not exactly a movie critic, and I'm sure you can read lots of reviews that'll tear it apart for certain things, but it's not a perfect film, and I think you can make a really great third movie, possibly, because they do have a very solid foundation. They've got interesting characters. Like Jude Law's Watson is still very good and entertaining, and I like seeing Holmes and Watson. So overall, I think it's a very enjoyable movie, and if you're not expecting like an Oscar winner or something, you should be able to enjoy this movie. In some unfortunate news concerning the development of Kick-Ass 2, it's looking like Matthew Vaughn is not planning on returning to direct the film. The article I read stated that he might be interested in returning to produce and oversee the film, but it's unlikely right now that he will be directing the sequel, which is unfortunate because he did a very solid job on the first movie. Here we have the teaser poster for the Bourne Legacy starring Jeremy Renner. And while I'm not a huge fan of the Bourne series of movies, I do think it's a bit strange, the idea of doing a Bourne movie without Matt Damon, the character Jason Bourne. I don't know much about where they're going with this one, but I do think that picking Jeremy Renner for the lead might be a good choice because he's already got the legitimacy doing movies like The Hurt Locker, and now with movies like Mission Impossible and the Avengers, he's getting more mainstream recognition. So he could be a very strong lead to take over this franchise. Now to finish out this video, I've just got some recently released movie stills to show you. Here's a shot from Prometheus. Here's a shot from The Hobbit featuring Bilbo. Here's a shot from Men in Black 3 featuring J&K. And my personal favorite, a shot from The Avengers featuring Thor and Captain America, and what looks like the aftermath of a pretty big battle. So if you are interested in downloading these pictures, I've got links in the description. So that's pretty much all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, subscribe, and tune in next time.